Hello, everyone.
Hello, as we're turning our phones off.
Wow.
I think we need to start posting rules.
I
For the
know.
podcast.
Yeah, yes.
like like when you go to the movies and before the movie starts, it says make sure to turn off your phones.
Yeah.
Then I think we need to start doing the same thing for the podcast.
For sure.
The Rabbi is too popular to leave
That's
his phone
true.
on.
The Rabbi is popular. That's the name of the book.
Yeah. Is
The
that the name of
Rabbi
your book?
is popular.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe at the end of this conversation about the book we're about to discuss, we could talk about the movie we both saw, just for a few minutes.
Oh yeah, sure,
yeah, but,
sure,
okay,
absolutely,
leave a teaser.
absolutely.
Oh, that's
little
a guy.
teaser.
I'm interested to hear
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
You're not going to tell us which one it was?
We'll save it for after.
You're going to have to, no matter how boring this discussion gets, you have to stick around.
This is
you have to stick around to hear the movie review.
This is not going to be boring.
That's what we call a teaser. That's a teaser.
Exactly.
So today we're going to do this is our fifth, might be our fifth book club.
Oh,
so at least our fourth.
Oh, really?
It's our fourth or fifth.
Wow.
Oh, good.
And we're going to talk about the book, The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. So as a quick background to the book was written in 1951. Eric Hoffer himself is a fascinating guy. He was a dock worker for his entire life, and just as sort of a hobby, in his off time he studied history and psychology, and he wrote this book just in his spare time. And
that makes me feel really bad about myself. Okay, go on.
Yes.
Really depressing.
Why?
Because I'm supposed to be like academic and like writing and thinking.
You are?
I mean, I'm an educator. He was just like a regular guy working at the dock, and he managed to write a book that people are going to read probably forever. That's really
so
Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But so he wrote this book in his spare time, and The True Believer it's essentially a psychological analysis of people who become fanatics.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of the key thing here is if someone becomes a fanatic for anything. I mean, we can all there's fanatics of all different causes, right?
Sure.
And so Hoffer did this psychological analysis of for the people that become fanatics of whatever the cause is, and that's one of the things he talks about is the cause is sort of irrelevant to this,
right?
But what causes someone to become a fanatic? Mm. And there's one quote in the book I'll just start off with because I think it's a good way to introduce our discussion. He writes, "For though ours is a godless age, is very much the opposite of irreligious. The true believer is everywhere on the march."
Oh, interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting.
And that's something we've talked about on the podcast before, right? Is that to believe in something beyond yourself is a very human instinct.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was I wanted to give the intro to the book and sort of start off with that. Before we started recording, Rabbi was saying how the book is fairly short, but there's layers on layers on layers on layers to this. It's very dense in his analysis, and so I have some ideas of where we can start, but where do you guys want to start with the discussion?
I would like to, Jay pointed out a quote. I would like to mention a quote that he has in the book, which says, he talks a lot about one of the main things is hate, how these fanatics are attracted through hate to join these mass movements. So it's one thing becoming a fanatic, and now it's another thing taking yourself and joining one of these mass movements. And he writes very interestingly, we do not usually look for allies when we love, but we always look for allies when we hate. I've often said in my class, when we talk about this concept of Ava V'yira, of love and fear of the Almighty, or what the opposite of love we think about is hate. And I've always said in the class, to get us to hate someone in this class would take me maybe 4 or 5 classes. And I can get everybody here in the room to hate this individual. Because all you got to do is just isolate them and just point out the differences and why he's making our lives worse, this guy. And it wouldn't take long before we all joined in together and said, let's get rid of this guy, throw him out of the class, or even worse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To love, to have someone fall in love with you or to join in love in a good cause takes a million times more effort, because we don't look for allies when we love, but when we hate, when you have that thing that's brewing underneath, you always look for allies. And unfortunately, it's a lot easier to get allies than we think it is. So
true.
I mean, that was one of his things that really stuck out in the book for me was, how easy it is to get people to just hate a cause, an individual, a government, just anything to get them to hate. It's not very difficult.
I think it's important also to think about the context of when he wrote it, because this was the early 50s, very early 50s, right after, World War II. And I think there was an interesting moment where, there are a lot of books from that time period around this topic, actually. And I think that people were starting to ask themselves, how did this happen? Like, we were post-Enlightenment. We were supposed to be smart. We were done with religious dogma leading everybody. It was, post-scientific revolution, all of this. And yet human beings turned out to be just as shitty as they were before. And it's like, how did we end up here? And I feel actually after reading this that we're having that exact same moment right now. And it's like even more pronounced because we know now we have the history of the Holocaust. We understand the psychology of, we try to understand the psychology of Nazis and the gulags and all the different things that happened in the 20th century that were horrific, right? And here we are 26 years into the 21st century, and it feels like we're repeating the same behavioral patterns that we've had before. And it's like, why? And I think that Eric Hoffer does an amazing job of really pinpointing what it is about human nature that causes people to do these horrific things and join horrific groups. And, and because I'm one of the people who think the 90s, I grew up in the 90s, a very innocent decade. We were talking about it the other day. What was the 90s were like post-Soviet rule and, things looked good and it was before 9/11. And you would think, okay, humanity has emerged from this mentality and here we are kind of back in it. And so I think the book is relevant today in a way that maybe it wasn't even 30 or 40 years ago.
I don't know. I thought about this a lot, because I knew that it's eventually going to come, besides talking about the book itself, it's eventually going to come to talk about the relevance of today.
Yeah.
And I don't really see it, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yes, I don't. And I'll tell you why. He's talking about mass movements, literally mass movements. Take Nazism or communism. Yeah. Those were the two big movements that he experienced in his lifetime that he's really writing about.
Yeah.
And if you take a look and you analyze both of these movements, it's very different than today. Today, there's a lot of fracture, I believe. But you can't say that there's a mass movement working towards a specific ideology, towards something. You may have different factions of, let's say, for example, the climate change. People join a climate change movement, right. But it's not a mass movement built out of this incredible, that everyone in almost every member there that he describes in his book is feeling, number one, alienated, right. Disillusioned, angry, and most importantly, hates themselves. And hates themselves. And this then becomes a conduit for them to really want to, number one, do some action, because you have to have that, to do some action, have a leader that is going to take this mass and really turn it into something. And he goes through the stages, right. Of it. And if we want to go through those stages, and then create this thing that's actually going to have some kind of an effect on society, where you think that it's going to, by that time, people are disillusioned already, because a lot of people, after communism, you buy communism and then you experience, 4 or 5 years of Stalinism, and you've lost your love, of that. Today, I find that we are totally fractured, that there isn't this kind of common ideology where, you know what, we're so angry at something that we have to lash out. Well, I understand that we as Jews want to look at this free Palestine as this kind of mass movement that's working. But if you think about it, it's not a movement. It's a bunch. You have a variety of people that are in it from the worst of the worst. I would call them Hamas, the murderers of Hamas, to these idiots in Hollywood that know nothing. That know nothing, that are not coming from a point of view where Hoffer is talking about, where you hate yourself to the point, whether you're poor or you feel society has wrecked you or whatever it is. That's where he's zeroing in on this danger of it coming together. And when you have these idiots in Hollywood that are getting up there, peace. I just remember of a few years ago at the Golden Globes where Ricky Gervais says, "No one, whoever you win an award, just shut up, okay? You're nobody to lecture anybody because you don't live in the real world and you have no idea." So to call this a mass movement that is bearing all of the signs and agitation of what he's referring to, of the true believer, of the true fanatic, like Jay had, opened it up with a fanaticism. I don't see fanaticism. I find misguidedism, hatred. Yes, there is the hatred, the sin wars, of the world. But the Free Palestine movement, compared to what we're talking about here, versus Nazism and communism, there's a friend. There's no leadership. I mean, there's someone leading this movement.
I have a feeling Jay and I are gonna have the same response to you, but you go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So all right. So I will respectfully disagree.
Okay.
And there's kind of 2 points I want to make. Number one is, one of the points that Hoffer makes, and we talked about at the top of the podcast, is that the movement is irrelevant, right? These people, they feel inadequate, they're alienated, they're seeking meaning in a cause, which we all kind of know those things, are looking for a purpose. I think, Rabbi, you brought up an important point that was really unique to Hoffer that I had never read before, is he talks about how they actually want to erase their idea of themselves as an individual, right? They want to lose themselves in the mass, right? And so which is, I think, brings me to the first point of the reason I disagree with you, is that, so we see what happened with Venezuela this week, right? And you saw the people out in the streets protesting against what Trump did, right?
Right.
It's the same people that are protesting against Israel, right? It's the same people, and so it's not. And then another example is on a micro level is Greta Thunberg, right? She goes from being climate change to being pro Hamas. Well, what do those two things have to do with each other?
Nothing.
Nothing.
But she's
But she is looking for a movement, right? She wants to become part of the mass.
Okay.
And the other point that I'll make on that is, when you look at, and I'll go back to the Gaza encampments, because I think we probably all saw videos like this where people were chanting, right? You'd have one people with a blowhorn chanting some nonsense thing, and everyone responds. Right. And it's just they're just these mindless drones that are just responding to what some authority figure is telling them to say. So I think the size of the movements, I actually don't think is that relevant to this. I think the key thing is that people are losing themselves in the movement. And the last point that I'll make is, as far as people hating themselves, I think the people. So I saw a chart during this whole encampment thing that this was a movement that was limited primarily to elite colleges, like smaller colleges, state colleges. We're not having this issue, right? It was Harvard, Brown, Columbia, right? It was these types of schools. Why? Well, I mean, and this is my psychological analysis. I think a lot of the people at the school who are joining those movements, they do hate themselves, and they see themselves as this privileged elite who hasn't earned anything, and it's their way to repent for this unearned privilege that their parents have given them.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, Jay. The only thing is, if over and over again in his book, he stresses the idea of self-sacrifice, meaning that the people that join these mass movements are willing to pick up arms to go and to change their situation because they totally want to erase themselves. I would like to go back now. It's 2026. For a year ago, and track down some of those people that marched in Brown and Princeton and asked them, what are you willing to do for Palestine? What are you willing to do for Palestine? Besides, I understand missing class and having no water, because Colombia didn't give them any water. There was no water.
That?
Remember that? There was no water. We need water, we need water.
Such idiots.
These people that Hoffer is referring to don't give a crap about water. I mean, they're happy that there's no water because that reinforces their ideology that change must be done. Now, if you told me that, you know what, there was a charter that, you know what, and someone put out a 9-point campaign that this is what we are going to fight for. We are going to make sure that Israel gets erased and you are going to be at the forefront. We're going to see thousands of American students pick up and fly to Gaza and pick up arms. Yes. I'm with you 100% because that he emphasizes over and over and over again. Now, I'm not saying that people are not drawn to movements. People are drawn to movements. Absolutely. People are drawn to religious movements. People are drawn to organizations such as, you know, like the Shriners. People are drawn to many different, but he's talking specifically about a fanatic, someone that is willing to step out of his comfort zone, not only like to sleep on a tent for 2 weeks and, you know, I mean, water, give us water, you know, like, and then the movement ends. They go home. Javier Bardem goes to his 22,000-foot mansion, eats a fine meal, you know, sits down and has 8 women, whatever he does over there, and then he takes off his keffiyeh and makes another $20 million movie. That's not what Hoffer is talking about.
Right. So go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? So we need to make that distinction. I'm agreeing with you, Jay, that people are looking to join. We are tribal. Nothing to talk about. We are tribal. We want to belong to something. We want to do. But I would say more than the Free Palestine movement. I'm looking at, you know, back in like the Iranian Revolution of '79, when these people were willing to dump the Shah, but they were also willing to put themselves in tremendous risk physically. I mean, taking the American embassy, taking all the embassies, getting out in the streets, facing policemen. These are people that are truly fanatical, and that's why they were successful, because Khomeini read this book and, you know, and knew how to build a mass movement based upon this book. These people were disillusioned, suffering economically. The Shah didn't do himself any favors by having the secret police, you know, crush thousands of people innocently. And those people were willing to put their lives on the line. You can shoot me and I'm willing to take the bullet because I am a believer in Khomeini and the Islamic revolution. There I could see it, but this Free Palestine, and a year from now it's going to dissipate. Besides the Muslims, I mean, they have a different story. But the mass movement.
But neither of you have mentioned something very important. I mean, when I read this, I was not even thinking about Free Palestine or any of the progressives. I was thinking about Nick Fuentes and his army of ridiculous men who, if you read this book, literally is describing these boys, right? These are young men who hate themselves, who have no meaning of purpose, literally every single part of what he's describing. But I'm telling you, I think you're wrong only in the sense, Todd, that because you're not online and you don't live in the online world, which is fine, but this is a growing movement. This is a growing movement, and that's what scares me.
Every one of these people has a cell phone. Every one of these people has a chat thing online. Right. This is not what he's talking. He's talking about fanatics that are willing to self-sacrifice themselves. not these toothless idiots in Arkansas that follow Fuentes.
No, but
Who?
it's
I mean,
not.
where's the movement? Where is
it's
where
growing.
do you see it?
I think it's
where?
really growing.
How do you see this?
There's an army
Just
of them.
Why? Because you have anonymous people chatting online with chat with
no.
with
When
things?
my students
Yes.
listen, when my students who are Jewish and in college, so that you're college educated
Right,
Jewish kids
right.
are telling me that they are watching Nick Fuentes and they're enjoying his videos. Okay. And if you've never seen a Nick Fuentes video, I suggest you look it up because you have to understand what we're dealing with here. I am concerned. And listen, Halavai, please God, I'm wrong and I'm being an alarmist, but I am concerned that this guy has read Eric Hoffer's book and knows exactly what he needs to do to get people to listen to him. Not only listen, but take action like what you're talking about. You're right. You're right. Most kids today are lazy and these are not revolutionaries. They're idiots. But I'm telling you, there's something different and scary about what's happening on the far right now when it comes to people like Nick Fuentes. I believe it. I don't know, Jay, what do you think? You spend time online like I do. Do you see that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think there's one other thing also. I have a theory about Rabbi, you were saying about that these people aren't literally sacrificing their bodies for the causes. So I do have a theory about there's so not so much the Griper thing, but for the Free Palestine movements, for like these environmental extremists. Right. I think there's one thing about those movements that is fairly unique from movements in the past, and that's that these movements are primarily led by women.
Ooh.
I think
everyone right now.
Well, no, I mean,
does that matter?
I think
does that matter?
No. I think, yeah, I think it absolutely matters.
Right.
I think that the way that men and women show extremism is different.
Interesting.
Extremist men are going to pick up guns more frequently.
Yes.
Right? I don't think extremist women necessarily pick up guns as much.
That's
so I think, and this is total conjecture on my part, but I do know for certain that there have been studies done about the Free Palestine movements, and it was disproportionately a female movement.
Interesting.
And I think that is a big difference from these other, from the Nazis or from Jonestown or Waco or whatever, like these other cult movements. As far as I know, and I'm sure there have been some that are female led, but all the ones that I'm aware of have been male oriented movements. These modern movements are not. And I think that could be one potential reason there's a difference there. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe.
But Tara, are you suggesting that this fear of that Eric Hoffer is sort of pointing out, right, is not, couldn't happen in this country?
It could happen.
Do you think it could happen?
Yes, I think it could absolutely happen. If there would be, for example, a collapse of the economy, a total collapse of the economy where you literally couldn't feed your family.
Right.
Okay, you couldn't feed your family. Meaning not, hey, you know what? We fought over toilet paper during COVID. You remember that? That scare? We didn't.
Right.
Well, when you literally have a difficulty feeding your family on a daily basis, and there is no hope. It's not like someone is going to come up and say, well, this is temporary and, we're going to do something. Then I believe you would have the nucleus, because I think it's all really comes down to the economy.
Yeah.
Okay. Because all politics is local, said the great, Tip O'Neill, our congressman from Boston. All politics is local. So what happens in Israel with the Palestinians, great. If you are a guy living somewhere in Ohio and you literally can't feed your family and there's no hope, this is what's going to happen, because it's going to come from the people, like he mentions about the five types of poor people. Yeah. It's going to come from the recently poor people. It doesn't come from the abject poor that always live poor people. They're always going to do. It's going to be from the newly founded poor people that have just lost all hope in being able to help themselves, and they hate themselves. They look in the mirror, they can't stand who they see, and they're blaming it on somebody. whether it's the government, whether it's going to be the Jews, whether it's going to be
Right.
black people, whoever they're going to blame for their situation, then I think, then we're going to see this kind of mass movement coming up, and then a Nick Fuentes jumps on board. It's very rarely.
But I think maybe
it's very rarely that a leader creates the movement.
Right.
He writes that in the book as well.
Right.
The leader doesn't create the movement. The movement starts organically.
Yeah.
The Germans, and I know that it's a very different situation, but think about the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic came around, and the inflation was 1,000%.
Right,
I mean, what you had in the morning, you didn't have in the afternoon. So Hitler came in at a time when people already were suffering. I mean, then all he needed to do was to marry that suffering and that hatred towards a cause, and the cause is, we're Germany. We were defeated, but this is not who we are. We are the fatherland. We are strong. We are powerful. We're proud people. And then you pick the Jews. I mean, an easy target. So then, yes, that is a time when I think we have to see a certain decline in our standard of living to where we're really losing all hope. And today, I mean, I'm not minimizing his. I'm not minimizing the Nick Fuentes effect, what's going on. I understand that, but it's mostly guys who are sitting at home on their computers.
But that's a very large group of people and growing every day. And what you're talking about, the collapse of the economy, for a lot of young men, especially, the threat of AI coming in and taking away so many jobs, the lack of good jobs available right now. I mean, there are like, I feel like there are signs for some people that this is what's coming down the line. And I think we're starting to see maybe a beginning of that, of what you're describing. I mean, I hope not, but like, I do think so. And by the way, put on top of it, something we all know, right? The loneliness, the lack of community, the lack of religious belief. I mean, all of these things, kids are really suffering with that too. I mean, kids, young men and young women, I should say, both are really, really suffering. So it doesn't take much to light a match and explode the whole thing. And I feel, at least from my own little experience, that I'm starting to see some of those embers start to fan out.
I just want to say, I'm not saying that there's no problems here in the United States. We have problems, and we need to monitor those problems and need to do whatever we can to alleviate these people's concerns.
Right.
If this is a concern among young men, we need to focus on that, and help them. I'm not saying it's not, it doesn't exist, but until what we're talking about specifically about this book. I mean, till I see that Nick Fuentes gathers together 25,000 young men in some town, and I'm not talking about Charlottesville where we had the guys, they're not going to replace us, okay? And the president says, well, but there's good people on both sides. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about 25,000 people marching in Washington, 50,000 people angry, marching, bloody, then game on.
Right.
Then it's game on. But again, not to minimize what Jay is saying, and I agree with Jay that it's a problem that people are online. Because he's the smart one. He's the smart one among us here.
Never with me.
He's the smart one.
Whenever Jay says, so smart. Me, no. My ideas are dumb.
No, you're also smart.
Oh, am I?
You're also, but you had some questions. Why don't you ask some questions?
We'll clip that for later on.
You're also smart. That's been my whole life. That's the way I've been treated. No. So, okay, let's change. Okay, so fine. We have our feelings about if this is relevant to today.
And it could be, but again, we always go back to generational.
Yeah, it could be generational.
Could be. I grew up in the post-World War II generation, and my reference is Nazism and communism.
Right.
Versus, I'm not online, and I don't see no Nick Fuentes every day.
Right.
I just flip through and little clips, of these guys.
I'm very, very concerned about it, more than I've ever been concerned about any group of people or any leader. I think that he in particular is very different than anyone else. He's not in the same category as a Tucker Carlson or whatever. I think Nick Fuentes is a uniquely dangerous person. And I'm basing that not just on what my own feelings of watching him, but like listening to my sons talk about him, listening to people online, watching his videos myself. Like, he is very concerning, but we don't need to spend the whole episode talking about Nick Fuentes.
We want to talk about
but I do want to ask Jay about I was curious because one of the things, obviously, that's a theme in this book is about self-identity and individualism. And I was thinking about religion, and I feel personally that the Hasidic movement, especially the teachings of Hasidus, are like an antidote to somebody feeling like they are not an individual while being part of a group, you know, because there's so much of an emphasis on like the self and your own, you know, like working on yourself and building yourself up. And I'm curious what your thoughts were about that, because you're such an individualist, I think, in general, like politically and just in general. I find that about you. Like, did that ring true for you, or how did you feel about that?
It's interesting because I thought about this a lot, and this is probably my third time reading the book. But I was this reading, I was thinking about that a lot, about, you know, there are obviously religions that are religions of fanatics.
Yeah.
Right. You think about, like, you know, Westboro Baptist Church,
right,
as an example, right?
Right.
But then, you know, when you read this book about Hoffer, you read The True Believer, and you think, what is it that allows some religions to sort of walk the line of being beneficial to somebody and not tip over the edge of becoming a religion of fanatics?
Right.
And it's really hard. It's hard to put your finger on it. And I actually thought about that throughout reading the book, and I'd actually be interested to hear what the rabbi's opinion about that is. But, you know, when it comes to, I'll say this about being an individual, and I think I said this on the podcast probably 45,000 times at this point, but I'll say it again.
I'll let you say it again.
Social media is the worst invention in the history of mankind. Every day I become more convinced that I am absolutely right. It is making everybody stupider, and people. And the perfect example is, you know, there's that clip of that kid at the America Fest thing confronting Ben Shapiro about the USS Liberty, right? All of a sudden, that's a big thing, as if any of these people have any clue about the USS Liberty. But they watched a 30-second TikTok video, and now they're experts that Israel intentionally attacked the American ship because, you know, I mean, it was the fourth day of the 6-day war, so they'd already won the war, basically. So now they're going to attack American ships for some reason. That's inexplicable.
They're just idiots.
But now they're experts, right? And that's why social media, I think, is so dangerous, is because it's one thing if you're an individual and you pride yourself in being educated, but also, I think more importantly than that, being humble in that, acknowledging to yourself that you don't know what you don't know,
right,
and that you are ultimately a very imperfect, ignorant person,
right.
And I think that we have sort of this toxic stew now, where all the kids get a trophy.
Yeah.
Right. It's you know, it's you know, Johnny's
rights.
Perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Johnny's perfect.
Everyone's
And
perfect.
as long as and the answers to all of Johnny's problems are in the next TikTok video. If he just keeps swiping TikTok video, I'm not on TikTok, so I don't even know if you swipe videos, but whatever you do with TikTok, if you just keep swiping the video, the answers to all of your life's problems are they're in the next video. That's it. And so I think we have this really toxic stew of raising a group of both sort of demoralized narcissists, which it seems like an oxymoron, but I think it actually is the case in a lot of ways, and people that are unbelievably ignorant but think they're informed. And I think it's a really bad combination for
So
society.
I want to frame that same question to my father, but a little slightly different, because we come from a religious community. Both of us were raised religious our whole life, but we also grew up around people who became religious
Right.
and chose this lifestyle. And I think there's an interesting way of looking at it, because sometimes you would see the biggest fanatics are people who came to religion later in life versus the people who had been there all along.
Sure.
So I'm curious if you want to comment on that, because I think it is very relevant to what he writes here
I think it is.
about this concept.
This I agree. Religion, like anything else in the world, is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I mean, it can bring the greatest affirmation and meaning and purpose to people's lives. It makes people do things that they would never in their wildest dreams do, on a positive sense.
Mhm.
I mean, to go to Africa and work with these villagers there in the worst type of environment, in the poorest environments, to go out and to heal people, to really strive to get out of your limitations, to do something exceptional.
Mm.
And that's religion at its best. When it does that, and it encourages you to get out of yourself and to go out there and to heal this world and to make this world a better place. And it's not only it's relegated to Judaism.
Right.
Many religions, are based upon this idea of repairing the world, and that's at its best. And there, people, grow and are empathetic and are sympathetic and are really willing to sacrifice on a very, very positive way. On the other hand, religion, like anything else, can be manipulated into the worst of circumstances. We have been the victim of 2,000 years of anti-Semitism. It was institutionalized by the Catholic Church. By no one else. The early church fathers institutionalized anti-Semitism, by calling us, subhumans or whatever it was, and not allowing us to integrate in the Christian world, whatever the circumstances were. And then you had societies that took this and their words and turned it against us into not only that abrogating our rights, but literally massacring us. Mm-hmm. And the first best instance, the Crusades.
Right.
The Crusades was not a war against the Jews. The Crusades was a war against the Muslims. What did we have to do with the Crusades? And yet they used the religion to massacre the Jews. So religion, I think, if it's used and manipulated in this way, could bring tremendous damage. And I believe also that people that are attracted to religion and being attracted to religion are by nature going to be wanted to join a mass movement. So if already you have believers, let's say you have already believers, but they believe in whatever, in some kind of religion, and things go south, I would not be surprised that these very religious people are on the forefront of these horrible movements, because they're already in tune. Their natural inclination is already to join movements. So it's just a little jump and a skip and a hop, from going to church every Sunday to joining, the Nazi movement.
So how do you make sure that people who are looking for a more religious life and looking for community and looking for that sense of belonging and a movement, like you're saying, how do you stop them from going to the fanatic part?
You have to give them meaning. People need to live life with meaning and purpose. If they don't have meaning and purpose, they are vessels for accepting fanaticism. Mm-hmm. They are totally vessels for being radicalized. You're not going to radicalize easily a guy that has a job and has responsibility and has a family, although those times happen to it. Right. It could happen, I'm not saying not, but you're much more likely to find that who's getting radicalized in anything, no matter what it is going to be those people that are unhappy, that are disillusioned, that could have been somebody, didn't turn out that way. They feel the world is against them. It's not giving them any chance, any hope for success. They are vessels for radicalization. And this is true for every religion. Yeah. Because you have Jews the same way. Right. That could be radicalized, the same way. So the first thing and most important thing that I think that we can do as a society is give people meaning and purpose. Make sure that, we teach this in school. It starts at 4 or 5 years old. It doesn't start at 21 when you get into college, which is a cesspool. And we've seen already what colleges have done. Like Jay was saying that Brown and Stanford and Columbia and Harvard and Yale were the worst of the places. We need to teach this to children in elementary school, that you are important, you have a purpose, there's meaning to your life, and those are values that you need to carry on, through. And it's going to be tough times and good times and hard times and better times, but we are all going to stick together because we as Americans believe in certain values, and that's life, that each of us lives a good life, liberty, that makes sure that everybody is free, and pursuit of happiness. And it's already written into our on a constitution, whatever works. We already have a thing.
Right.
But we have to work on it. It's not so easy.
Right.
See, it's much easier dealing with, with something else. And I'm not downplaying what Trump did, but it's easier to kidnap this guy than put all of your efforts in making sure that Americans, have a good education and good jobs and whatever. So that's what we have to do. That's what then that's religion again at its best. At its best, to give people hope, values, morals, ethics, and a responsibility to know. And then you put God in there, that there is a God in heaven, and that we are responsible, and He watches us, and He cares for us, and that's I think our job.
And I think one other thing I'll add, and I think you touched on this briefly, I think, Rabbi, but I think one other thing that I'll add on to that is that I think the thing that Judaism in particular does an excellent job with is the idea that people as individuals have inherent value.
Exactly.
And that's one of the points, we talked about this already, that Hoffer talks about, is people who become these fanatics, they don't see themselves having any value, and so they want to lose themselves in these movements.
Totally.
And where Judaism is the opposite of that, where Judaism says that every individual person has inherent value. And so
we need to make sure that value is exercised. It's not only a theory in their lives. I just had a meeting today with someone. We're sitting and we're talking about different things, and he brings up Telushkin's book about the Rebbe, where Telushkin writes one story about that when his father was very sick. They wrote to the Rebbe.
We talked about
this, right? We talked about
this.
You brought it up, Jay.
Jay
right?
brought it up. He
said,
Jay brought it up. We were just he brought this story up. He didn't remember that it was Telushkin's dad that we were talking about. But the Rebbe said, sent him some of the,
ask him a simple question. I think it was
about accounting.
Yeah.
Make him feel valuable.
Valued. Yeah.
And you think about that, it's brilliant.
The piece in the book that I find the most relevant right now, actually, and because of social media, which I know Jay hates the most, and you are not very involved in social media, but is the attraction to people who hate the same thing that you do, because and like you said about the class, you could get everyone to hate somebody in your class, but it's also just aligning yourself with something to hate. It's so easy and so much. I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say, I'm a little embarrassed, but I'm not too embarrassed to say, like, I scroll through Instagram and I'm like laughing and watching reels, and half of them are literally making fun of people and just giving me an opportunity. I'm being honest and vulnerable, like giving me an opportunity to feel better about myself because I'm like laughing or mocking or, disgusted at somebody else. I mean, why do people watch my 600-pound life? Right? It's entertaining because you laugh at them and you feel like I'm better. Right. And then you meet someone who also loves it. And that's it. Now I'm in a group. Now I'm in a movement of people who love to hate the same exact thing. And that is so dangerous because it comes from such a bad place. And it's so easy. It just manipulates us in a way that is the easiest.
I think those
thing.
10 pages that he talks about the hatred part, where hatred is a catalyst. I think that was the hardest part of the, because that seems real.
It is.
I mean,
that seems real.
I mean, him going through the theories and all of that is important too. But that hatred part is just, and you see
I mean,
it.
you see as a kid, I remember as a kid, no one sits you down and says, here's a chart of who's cool and who's not cool, right? It's like you take cues from the people on the playground or people in class, the ones who start snickering at the other. And all you want is to be in with the people laughing, not being laughed at, right? And before you know it, you're part of the laughing group, and you just can see it play out in little kids. And then as you get older, it's the exact same thing happening over and over again, maybe in different ways. It's not on a playground or in a classroom, but it's happening it's at work, it's in your friend group, it's in families, where it's just this like it's disgusting. It's just disgusting.
You bring up a topic that is one of the greatest fears of young boys, and that is being on the playground and they're choosing teams and you're not chosen. That is one of the greatest fears and humiliation, that you have to sit at the sidelines, and especially, of course, there's 21 guys there, and we decided 10 to a team, and you're the one schmo that wasn't. I mean,
it's worse for the parents. I'm sorry.
No, but the parents are generally not there.
No, but anytime I've been around where there was like choosing kids for teams, and I literally felt sick to my stomach watching it play out, because I was so nervous for my kids.
I always,
it's the worst.
You just don't want to be humiliated.
I know.
I mean, Ellie, my grandson, just went to camp for the first time. He spent 6 nights away from home. He spent a week in this what they call the Shluchim's camp.
He's 10.
He's 10. And he told me one day, he said, one day they were choosing teams, and I was the 10th man chosen. He was chosen.
Right.
He was chosen. He said he was the last guy, and he was chosen. And that, and I could just feel his trepidation. That, what, because this is all about in the book. It's the same thing in the book. We don't want to be isolated and to be that guy, we just don't want to be humiliated. I was talking to this fellow today in the things, and we were talking about fears. And I remember clearly with my bar mitzvah, I didn't have fear of reading the Torah, although I was nervous. And I had a Hasidic discourse to recite, and a Talmudic discourse that I had to recite, and an English speech, which I had to do. Those things made me nervous. But the biggest fear was when you came onto the bima, which is for our listeners, what it is, it's how would you describe the bima and the shul? The stage at the shul, that I would not be able to read the Torah unless standing on a stool.
Yeah.
That I didn't want my friends snickering at me. Look at him. He needs to stand on the stool. And thank God, a week before my bar mitzvah, that's all I prayed for. Don't give me a foot. Don't give me 6 inches. 2 inches. That's all I'm asking for, is please 2 inches. And we came into this sanctuary, and we took out the Torah, and thank God I was just barely able to see the top words on the Torah. And that again, that fear was, I didn't want to be humiliated.
But this is, I mean, you're a boy, Jay. I mean, you're a guy, I guess. And like
you guessed? What do you mean you guessed? What is Jay identifying?
He hasn't expressed it to me, but I think so.
Yeah.
But I mean, and you grew up differently than we did. And was that the same experience like that you had in school?
Of course.
I'm just curious.
This is a universal experience of not being humiliated.
Yeah, for sure.
That actually ties in. That actually ties into the movie that we saw, which I mean, we don't have to talk about it right now, but I think a big theme of the movie, which is called Marty Supreme. Sorry, I couldn't remember for a second.
Don't give it away.
I'm not getting sorry.
Stick around for
one thing about it, because I think a big theme about Marty Supreme is actually about male humiliation, which we can talk about later. But I think it is actually a very big theme. And the truth is, when you read through this book, and if we're not, I mean, I'm an educator, and I deal with young adults. Like, my responsibility is to look out for the people in the crowd who are alienated, right? Who are sitting at home, not showing up, not participating. And I think a lot of people, parents and community leaders, religious leaders, have to do a better job of identifying the people who aren't showing up so that we can reach out. I mean, because otherwise, I don't know what the answer is. Not everyone's going to watch Jordan Peterson and have like an awakening. Do you know what I mean?
Why
Like
not?
because that's just not realistic. A lot of guys are going to fall into very scary things. And when I read this book and see, and everything he writes about fanaticism, I see it. I see it happening maybe on a small scale, but I'm worried that it's going to grow. And I think we as a community have a huge responsibility right now to reach out to the people who are on the margins and make sure that this doesn't happen. That's the only way I could read this book. I don't read it any other way.
It's the bigger worry is like suicide.
That's also
suicide is, because a lot of these people are opting. The suicide rate among teenagers has skyrocketed over the past 5 years since COVID.
There's so many layers to it. We've talked about some of these things before. There's porn addiction, and young people are not having sex. There's no intimacy. Literally, these are things that are documented. These are they're doing real research on this stuff, and all of it just sounds like a recipe for exactly what Eric Hoffer is writing in this book, and that's what worries me.
Yeah.
Jay, what do you think?
There was one other thing I wanted to bring up, which I thought was a really interesting insight he had, where he talks about the importance of uncertainty, and he writes, "We can be absolutely certain only about things we do not understand. A doctrine that's understood is shorn of its strength. Once we understand a thing, it is as if it originated within us, and clearly, those who are asked to renounce the self and sacrifice it cannot see eternal certitude in anything which originates in ourselves." And I think it's such an interesting idea that once you actually understand a thing, right? And I think part of this, comes down to there's a certain pride, I think, that you get when you actually understand something.
Yes.
In that you've put the work in that to know that you've understood it, but also there's also a certain modesty to know that whatever the topic is, you'll never know everything, and there's always the well always goes deeper, right?
Sure.
But if you don't know things, right, you get this false sense of superiority. That, oh no, I understand. I understand this.
Of course.
Right? Now I understand this, and so I'm superior to you, and this group is superior to your group
because we know it.
That was such an interesting idea, and that's one thing I wanted to ask you, Rabbi, is, when you talk about, when you do services, when you talk about Torah to the congregation, I would imagine the percentage of people who you have congregated to over your career who have actually read even a single page of Talmud and actually understood it is probably 0.00001% of people, right? And so they don't, you don't really understand. Like, you understand to some degree, but you don't really understand it, right? Because then you start to look at the commentaries and you start to see like how many layers the onion is, and then you start to say, "Oh, I really don't understand this at all."
Well, of course.
So what is it? Coming back to we talked about the religion thing earlier, but why is it that do you think there's some ideas that are empowering ideas that people, they don't understand it, but they understand it well enough that they can live by its creed and it be a positive for their lives, and other things like if you look at like Mein Kampf as just the biggest example, right? And you start to look and you start to read things about Mein Kampf, people have analyzed it and just said like Hitler doesn't, like, he gets all the history wrong, he doesn't understand anything he's writing about, right? But he's confident he does, and the people who read his book are confident they understand it. Why is it that those ideas become so certain and negative, and the ideas that are less certain in the religious context can become beneficial?
We'll start with Mein Kampf. I mean, Mein Kampf again was not the catalyst. Hitler wrote it within a vacuum, I would say, of where there already was a tinderbox. So he didn't have to do much.
Yeah, that's true.
All he needed to do was strike a match. And that was what Mein Kampf was, whether it was real or whether it wasn't real. He could have written the Count of Monte Cristo, the same thing, but that hate-laced book Mein Kampf just came as a catalyst at the very right time. Had he written that 10 years prior, like in 1913, or 10 years later in 19, it may have done nothing. It may have been the writings of a lunatic, and there's plenty of people who've written books like this that have gone nowhere. No one knows about them. They're on the dustbin of history. But he just came at the perfect time. The perfect storm met the perfect madman, and he took advantage of it. That was his brilliance, that he took advantage, seeing that he had something here. The reason why Judaism, I think, works, even if you don't really understand, is because the first thing they teach you is humility. Humility. That we are never going to, even someone as great as the Rambam, who had a brain that I don't know how it worked, and how he was able to absorb everything and retain everything with no computer and
no chat GPT
to
organize it.
and just books, how he was able to do that. But he writes that there are certain concepts that human beings cannot understand. And I think that kind of humility coming from someone like the Rambam, that we're just not going to understand it, this should not deter you from trying. Right. Keep going. And if you understand one page or 2 pages, and then you may have a novel idea that may work, So that's been the whole history of scholarship. You're not going to be Solomon, and you're not going to be the Rambam, but you're going to be someone who's going to be able to, let's say, master one book of the Torah. Yeah. If you really study, you'll get to know Genesis really well, the stories really well, pick up some of the, and that will keep you humble and sane, and keep you going. And you have to have curiosity. You want to do more, and more and more. So therefore, I think that's the big difference. Like you mentioned, it gives us meaning and purpose, but we also have that modesty to say to ourselves, I'm never going to understand it. I mean, and sometimes I read something, and in the Talmud it's so hard. I just say to myself, you know what? Look, let's move on. Let's go on, because if I get stuck in this, I'll never be able to do it. So, I'm not going to be the Rambam. That's it.
It's interesting, what both of you said about the uncertainty and not knowing. And, one of the things that's been really humbling for me is I taught Jewish history for many years in high school, and particularly about modern Israel. And it wasn't until I stopped teaching after 12 years that I started doing these trips to Israel, where I took, different kinds of students, and I started delving into a lot of the history that I actually didn't know anything about. Right. And it was really hard for me to admit that I barely knew anything about it. Right. Here I was, supposedly the expert, and then I'm learning all these new things that I didn't really know about. And I still, till today, even though now I've spent years trying to read what I can and listen to what I can and go back to the sources, I still feel uncertain to tell people or to say, listen to me because I know something about this topic. I'm more uncertain now at 45 years old than I was at 25 years old. If you asked me 25-year-old ChayaLeah, I would have been like, oh, I know everything there is to know about modern Israel, and let me tell you what I know and what you should know. And now I find I'm so uncomfortable saying that I know anything, because I feel like there's just never a way. I just don't. And I'm it's taking me, I'm learning from my father. I hate to praise you, but watching my father, who's not 45, he's a little older than me, but spend his days, reading and 55. Studying. Yeah. Reading and studying and learning Torah, that it gives me the, I do that now, right? I have to just go back and you just have to keep reading and learning and never give up. And just, it's humbling, honestly.
We were talking humbling. That we've gone,
I know
we've diverted from the idea, of the book, and we're talking about, religion. But one of the great things about religion is what we call the mystery, the mystery of God, that we will never truly, truly understand what the essence of God is. And we can't understand, even though it kills us. And not only me, but even someone like Moses, who was dying to know, what is the accounting system here? How do you make those decisions that this guy gets $1 million and this guy gets leprosy? Why?
Right.
It doesn't seem to be fair. This guy's a schmo, and this guy happens to be a good guy. So I'm not the first guy to really obsessed with this issue of God's benevolence, but there's another word I was thinking, benevolence.
Beneficence?
Beneficence, yeah, something like that, because I'm from Canada,
Yeah,
Quebec.
yeah.
I think in French.
Yeah.
So English is my second language, for those that don't know me.
Sure.
But the benevolence of God has always been something that I struggle with, because like everybody. I mean, the whole idea of this idea of theology is, why are good people suffering? Why? What's the purpose? But here comes the mystery of God, that you are not going to be able to know that. So you're either going to have to admit that and say, even though that you are a human being and I want things to make sense to me, I want it to make sense. Why is this happening? And you're not going to be able to. So you're going to have that humility to say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to go a certain distance. The rest of it, I'm just not going to be able to see.
Maybe
but
that's
a
the
lot
answer.
of people can't do that.
Right.
Like
Right.
you take the atheists of today. They will not ever abide by this idea that there are things that we can't know. We can't know.
Maybe that's the answer to fanaticism, right? Maybe because what Eric Hoffer is writing here is so much about wanting that certainty to belong and to understand.
That's what
and
Jay
so
meant.
right. So I think what you're saying is that mystery, maybe having that
maybe
humility,
one day we should do
combined with mystery is the answer to that.
Maybe we should do a thing on just the mystery of religion.
Yeah, I love that.
I mean, of something of not going,
Yeah.
not knowing, of just
Not being
and
sure.
just able to just revel in the idea that there's a mystery.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? And we're not gonna sit there for 60 minutes. Oh no! Now I know who the killer is.
Right.
We're just not gonna be able to do
I was
that.
thinking about it when it's funny you were saying that, because I was looking at my son this week, who's 16. He's my youngest son. And it was literally one of these innocent conversations. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I just looked at him for a second and I thought to myself, how did this human being get here? Right? Like, I know the science of how he got here, but like the mystery of it just struck me. Like, here is this human being who is beautiful and smart and funny. And he's like talking about, whatever it was. And just in that moment, I like had this like awe-inspiring moment of like smallness, for myself. Like, how I don't understand, he's a human, a person with feelings and thoughts. And I thought, like, it just was such a beautiful moment. And I think when you have that wonder and mystery and humility, it is, I think, the antidote to this garbage and to the stuff that he's writing about here that people don't have enough of in their life.
I'm very curious about the movie.
Oh, Marty Supreme. Yes.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
But because I had mentioned before about this Mad Dog, he hated it. He hated the movie.
That's so
hated it. He's a big. Is it Chalamet?
No.
Who is it?
No.
Who's it?
It's Jay.
Timothy Chalamet.
Oh, Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. He's the guy, right? He's a huge fan of his. Huge. I mean, the one that he did with Dylan. I mean, he even went to one of the openings, and he wouldn't come on a show. But he said, this movie, a stupid movie, a dumb movie.
No,
I mean, a guy chasing 2 hours. I sat through 2 hours. This is what he said today. I just heard him today. Sat through 2 hours and 50 minutes of the guy trying to guzzle himself and rip off people so he can go to some stupid tournament in Japan. Okay, that was a whole stupid movie.
No, he missed it. No.
Yeah.
That's what he
the only thing I can say, so I will say,
go ahead. I'm going to be quite excited.
I absolutely loved it. I thought it was an absolutely unbelievable movie.
Really?
But the guy, it was directed by this guy, Josh Safdie, and they have a certain style.
Yeah.
Like they have a style to their movies. They did, I don't know if you ever saw Uncut Gems. Adam Sandler.
Oh. That was a hard movie. That's a hard movie to watch.
So they did Uncut Gems. So, but if you saw Uncut Gems, there's like a very distinct style.
It's raw. I mean,
very
and raw.
It's very frenetic, and so I could see someone just saying like, this style is not my thing. I could totally see that, but I mean, the acting in the movie is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It is
you can't,
absolutely
and you
incredible.
can't root for anybody in the movie.
No.
I need someone to root for. There was no one to root
No,
for in this
you
movie.
could- No, you can totally root for. You can absolutely root for Timothy Chalamet's character.
Yeah, you felt
It's-
I did not. I mean,
Absolutely.
I didn't root for him. I didn't know what I wanted. I was so confused. I'm like, I want him to lose. I want him to win. I didn't know. I was like because a lot of the movie is about. Look, there is a Jewish element to it, which is a bit uncomfortable. There is a definitely like a
What do
Jewish
you mean?
underlying. First of all, he wears the Magen David the whole movie. So the whole movie, he's being such an asshole, this guy, and he's wearing a Magen David, okay, and he's like lying and cheating and and whatever. But there's something I think there's a piece. I don't know. I was very sympathetic to him in a way because just knowing the context, it's right after World War II. It's the Lower East Side of New York. There's just I don't know. There's something sympathetic about his character. I have to be honest. I really enjoyed the movie. I mean, I've never felt so much in a movie. I was like, whoa, like the whole time, like what? I was so like shocked, and I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
I will not give any spoiler. I will not give any spoilers, but I will say is the thing that I think makes the viewer root for him is he is obsessed with being the best.
Yes.
And he will do anything to be the best. And I think there's something of that quality in someone having that drive is I think you root for people like
Jewish?
that.
Yeah.
Actor.
I think he is.
He's Jewish?
Yeah.
I think he is. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, the people. One of the most
and the other, well, that's one of the things. The other very Jewish thing is he makes Holocaust jokes several times in the movie.
Jokes, and it's like you're like at first I'm like, what the heck? It comes out of nowhere, and then it's just like it's really interesting. It's a very interesting movie, and you just I don't know, but like going back to what I said earlier in the episode about male humiliation, like I saw a lot of that because he was just I think he felt humiliated over and over and over again. I mean, there's a scene towards the end of the movie where he's literally humiliated in front of other people, and you see on his face that he's just like, I'm gonna do this. I have to prove myself now. And I see it in other characters too. I see it in the rich guy. I see it in the guy with the dog. They were all humiliated in some way during the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And for men especially, not that women like being humiliated, but I think for men, it's one of the worst things that you can do is to humiliate a guy, and you just see it over and over. And it's a fascinating. I mean, you have to see it, Todd. It's a fascinating movie.
It's so everyone should see it.
My hero says no. My dog.
Whatever.
Everyone should see Marty Supreme. It is.
Yeah.
It is so good.
It's very interesting.
And Timothy Chalamet is he is the man.
He's incredible.
He is unbelievable. He's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible.
He's the hottest thing going now.
Oh, he's
the hottest thing.
He'll win. I think they'll for sure they'll be nominated, but they'll probably
for sure, yeah. The thing about him is he's not just a pretty face. He is a great actor.
Yeah.
He's incredible. And not just this movie. I think I've seen a lot of his movies now. I think in everything I've seen him in, he's just amazing.
I mean, in that Bob Dylan movie, he was amazing. He was so
and
good.
even
great.
He was so good.
It was great.
He was in the first thing I saw him in was a few years ago. He remade Wonka, which was a movie I had absolutely. I had zero interest in seeing. I had zero interest in seeing that movie. And I was absolutely captivated by him. I thought he was incredible in that.
It was better than the Johnny Depp version.
The Johnny Depp was
yeah.
Dark.
But
Johnny Depp is a pretty face.
He's a good actor too. I mean,
he's a good actor.
Talk about Johnny Depp for 40 minutes.
No.
Anyway,
but yes,
see it. If you have an opinion on Marty Supreme, please write to us. Tell us what you thought about it.
Read The True Believer. Go see Marty Supreme. It's a good weekend for you.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
That's great.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
We talked about Eric.